So welcome to Minibytes session 21. So we said and promised at the beginning of this term that we do 21 courses, each roughly 21 minutes long, over 21 days in the year 2021 on 21 different topics, all to do with technology. And this is the very last one. We're focusing on computing in the early years today. Thank you for those of you that have attended many sessions or some sessions, and welcome to those of you whose this is their first session. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is George Tyson. I'm a Senior Education Advisor with North Yorkshire Local Authority, and I'm also the EdTech Advisor for North Yorkshire Schools ICT. Schools ICT is a service which provides EdTech support and technology support through a technician service, hardware, software, purchasing license agreements, everything and anything which involves plugging in, switching on or going online. You can get through Schools ICT. And NYES, North Yorkshire Education Services, is the umbrella for the traded part of the North Yorkshire County Council. Together, they're going through the rebranding process to become what's called NES Digital, North Yorkshire Education Services Digital. So this is Minibytes session 21, computing in the early years. I will be going through a PowerPoint presentation today because I'm referring to a lot of text, and that's all to do with the documents which we're referring to in this case. For my reference purposes, I'm going to say early years throughout. This does include foundation stage as well. It's just for brevity, and in 21 minutes, it makes more sense if I just stick to one language point throughout. So I'm talking about 0 to 60 months old here. So if we come to the most recent document, the Early Years Foundation Stage Profile Handbook, you will find there at a quick search that you can find technologies throughout in different parts of that handbook throughout the profile. And what we want to look at is how we can actually interact with young people and the youngest children of all in our settings, and see how we can support them to learn what technology is, how it works and how it interacts with the world and how we interact with it. If we look at the understanding of the world statement, I'm not going to read this out because it's on the screen. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but it's about technology and the environment and having opportunities to explore those things. In particular, the 15th Early Learning Goal on Technology says that children recognise a range of technologies used. So how can we do this? Well, let's just take that first bullet point at the bottom there, and then we'll move into how they select and use in a moment. But recognising that technologies used in homes and schools can be through play, and it's probably best through play as well. The best situation I've seen with the youngest children is simply saying beep when you move a toy across a counter and you're doing the pretend supermarket example, and you're going through the play environment of the supermarket, and by physically saying beep each time you move something across a counter, just a toy table, then children will recognize that technology is being used somewhere in that situation, that shop. In a home, it might be about the remote controls to turn on and off television. It might be about the tablets or computers used in homes by parents or family members. And it might be about what you use for each thing. So, for example, controllers for a microwave or for a cooker do different things to controllers for a television, do different things to the controls for an Xbox or a PlayStation, and so on. So just looking at all these things and seeing it as technology as a whole is often the first step. And you can just call them gadgets, you can call them things, but that's where we go in that situation to start with, the recognition. Selecting and using technology can then become more interactive on the play. So children will be familiar with the remote controls at home, but you might want to do a bit of a remote control challenge. So bring in some remote controls from your own home environment or spare ones if you've got them, and get the children to select and use from the remote controls what they think will control which device. And again, just make this a playful experience. They can use the controls and they can tell you in the story about what they're doing and how they're playing and how these buttons affect what they're doing. You might want to bring into play with large toy remote controls or just buttons or numbers on tiles. And you can get them, okay, if you press the number 5, then how many star jumps do you do? And then you start to bring that link in with the maths and the technology together. If I press this button, it might just be a wooden block with the number 5 on it. But if I press this button, I have to repeat something 5 times. And I select and use the technology in play is as important as using it in real world to change channels, for example, on television. So looking at these things is the starting point, and playing with the concepts is a starting point. I often love the cardboard rockets and cardboard ships and spaceships that children set up, or trains. Again, cardboard boxes are often the best toys we have. But if you just draw a circle on there and say, what does that button do? You are exploring that technology being used in that toy train environment. And the children can explore that through their role-playing experiences as to what buttons they might need to do different things with their world experience. Carrying on through the expressive arts and designs, again, I'm not going to go into too much detail and read out all this slide for you, but the whole media and the whole materials. Now, this does not involve all technology all the time. You can use other activities and other varieties of things. So, for example, it says here art and music and movement, as well as technology, to support children's imaginations. Early Learning Goal 17 about being imaginative is a nice one, where it mentions about the representation of your own ideas, thoughts and feelings. So let's just break that second bullet point down a little bit and see where we could put in technology in here. So in my own ideas, I might want to create a remote control to control my parents or my siblings, and figure out if I press this button here, I might have a mute button for daddy when he's snoring, that sort of thing. I know my children would like to have that for me. So they might have a mute button. So what would a mute button look like? What does that mean? What does that do? How does it work? And you can explore all these ideas together. The children themselves might have a small play area, a small world environment of a farm or underwater or something similar. And they might choose to draw or create using blocks and stickle bricks and things, their own cameras or their own tools to interact with that environment. Using their own ideas, how would you catch that fish in the underwater environment? How would you make sure that creature is safe in the underwater environment? Or if you're on a farm, how would you keep these animals from escaping? Or how would you keep these animals safe or fed or watered and so on? Could you create a milking machine for the toy cows using the things you've got around you? All these devices and all these models, they don't have to be functionally appropriate. It could just be a drinking straw and a piece of cardboard. It doesn't matter. It's the ideas and the concepts behind the imagination and this imaginative play, which is really key. Remember, at this stage, we're moving into Key Stage 1 in a few years' time, potentially, and Key Stage 1 is just starting to use robots and things and using programming. So very early on, it's being imaginative. The understanding the world descriptor for outstanding. So this is if you're, sorry, exceeding, not outstanding, my apologies, that's my typo there. Exceeding in technology is broken down here. Children can find out about and use a range of everyday technology. So this could be a treasure hunt. What I quite like to do is consider the thoughts of young children and what, once they've stuck it in their mouth, how would they use it after they've chewed on it, made sure it's not edible? How can you use a range of everyday technology to engage with the children? So anything with a button on it could be used as technology. Anything which moves, twists, has a lever, spins, can be compressed or opened out, could be technology. And the children can select which technology they want to do to identify their need. Now it says here how to make a record of a special event in their lives, such as a journey on a steam train. And this is obviously alluding to cameras, which you might use a real camera for, or you might use a video camera or a phone. It doesn't matter what technology you use, it's just how you use it. So this technology descriptor for understanding the world in full is bridging from the play and the fake experience, if you will, and the developmental experience using toys and replicas of real things into using real things, or at least selecting which real things to do. One focus I like to have on this is considering actually the experience here, the journey on a steam train, is the starting point for the rest of the learning opportunity. So if we have a journey on a steam train or a visit to a farm or a walk through the woods or a splash in a puddle, any of those events could be recorded in many different ways. You can then look into your senses and bridge out across the different senses. So let's think about rain and puddles and rainy days. We could be looking at sight, and the children could consider, well, how could we record what we've seen? It could be a photograph, it could be a video, it could be something else. And they might have a chance to use technology to take those photographs on rainy days. You may want to look into soundscapes. There's plenty of websites out there that do soundscapes, and YouTube has got a lot of sound effects. And if you've got a home assistant like Alexa, for example, or the OK Google options, and there's various others out there, your mobile phone's got one if you just talk to it. If you ask your mobile phone to play a sound, or ask your device to play a sound for a particular experience, log fires burning, a fan blowing on a hot day, rainy day, rain on the windows, that sort of sensational sound, you will get those senses coming through in audio. You then can go through touch, taste, and so on, and touch all the senses in order. But how you'd record those things is up to that imaginative part of the brain to process it. The technology which we have can be used, and then children can move over time to actually taking recordings of their experience as they go through their early years and into Key Stage 1. One thing I like to also consider is actually the applications of these tools. So they might want to say, if I was in space, I would want to take a picture of something, I'd like to draw a picture of something, or I'd like to use different tools. There's nothing wrong with that. You can take any technology anywhere and make it do its function. At this point in time, it's recognizing that link between the function of the device and what your experience is. And the experience or the device can be fictional. And then merging those together so you get a creative solution. And then that will lead us on to the real world solutions, for example, cameras or videos or audio recordings. Flashing back in time a little bit to the September 2013, just for the early years outcomes here, I'm going to break it down a little bit into age-related references, just to show some examples of what tools you could use or how you can address these early years outcomes. So the first one, overarching, it says about the technology goal is to recognize the range of technologies used in places such as homes and schools and select and use technology for particular purposes. As a broad brush here, I like to do a walk through the school environment or a walk through some environment and consider what is technology and what is not. And this can be as broad as it possible. With the youngest children, it might be a case of, is it has buttons on it, or does it make a beeping noise, does it have a light on it? Then it's technology. As children get older and more advanced in their thinking and descriptive use of language, you might want to consider actually what's this technology used for? So school doors or setting doors often have a lock on them or some sort of mechanical or digital lock and code. So you might want to talk about the locks on the doors. You might want to talk about doorbells and how they work. You might want to go further past the foyer and talk about the camera if you've got some sort of camera in your setting to take photos of visitors, and move on through. But selecting and using the technology for particular purposes can be fun. You can make this into a tile game or a descriptive game or a run to different parts of the room game. And you might want to have an option of, this is my challenge, a closed locked door, and these are the possible solutions. You might have a digital keypad, a TV remote control, a stereo, and an Alexa. And you might say, okay, well, run to whichever one you think will unlock this door. And then get them to talk about that. And that would be selecting the technology without necessarily having the technology to hand. So let's look at the very youngest, birth to 11 months and 8 to 20 months. The beginnings of understanding technology lie in babies exploring and making sense of objects and how they behave. So at this stage, just having exposure to technology is probably enough, and different types of technology. So looking at a screen, if you can do a very simple bit of programming and download some simple apps. If you touch a screen which plays a sound or plays a video, YouTube's a classic one, for example, then that can be quite nice to get started on with those under 2 years old. But actually, it might also be a toy where if you squeeze its belly, it plays a tune, or you pull something on the floor and it does something. It's all about the cause and effect. If I do something, then something will happen. And that's the links we're after making. As it goes to 16 to 26 months, we can see here it's anticipating repeated sounds or sights or actions. So an adult demonstrating a toy here several times, so you press the button and the thing does its thing. That would be an anticipation reaction. And having a variety as well is interesting. One thing I quite like is the toys where they do similar but different responses each time you press a button. So for example, if you've got a toy train where you've got 2 different buttons on it to make different noises, so a whistle noise or a steam noise, and you press them and then you press one consistently, but then press the other one and see what the response is and talk about or show an interest in that response and see if the children can then sound the whistle for going through the tunnel on that train. But showing an interest in anything and actually creating your own toys as well. So as I've said in the second bullet point here, it's cardboard box play. You can make your shuttle to the moon in seconds, and using tin foil trays or paper plates or something else. You can use buttons and flaps and any sort of mechanism and learning how to operate them. So again, you can bring this into an experience, a descriptive experience, where you're sitting in your box rocket and you're going to the moon. But what does this button here do? How are we going to stop in time so we don't crash? Do we need to have anything else? I've just pressed this button. What's going to happen? And putting children in these experiences so they know what's going on. It doesn't have to be dramatic, scary. It can just be dramatic, engaging. Looking as we go through the age ranges here in technology for 22 to 36 months, we're going to be looking at basic skills. So this is now when you're going into your mud kitchens and so on, where you might have a wooden cooker or similar. So turning on, operating equipment, and you might also have the mechanical toys. This is when you're getting the link from the play cause and effect, and then you're starting to bridge those gaps into real world cause and effect as well. So you might get the idea of car keys making a car work and so on. With this one here, you might want to have some abstract concepts. So you might actually want to share a bunch of house keys with a car key on it and figure out what each key does. So one key opens a door, one key opens a car. What's the difference between the two keys and how does it work? You might want to have a selection of toys and have a race. So you might have a pullback car or a wind-up car that's shown in this example and have a little race between them and see if the way you operate the wind-up toy can make it go faster or slower than the pullback car. And you can bring in all sorts of experiments and all sorts of experiences here as well. With the basic skills of turning on and turning off, you can link this with the environment, and you can talk about saving energy and saving electricity by turning on or turning off lights when you're not in the room. And you can talk about things like controlling a fan. So on warm days during the spring and summer months, as it gets hotter, you may have an oscillating fan with 0, 1, 2, and 3. You might start to make those links with numbers, but also linked with the buttons and the operation of the fan, how fast it works. So just simple tools and simple things, but being able to turn things on and turn things up and operate equipment, which isn't just a television and isn't just an audio tool, are key. Obviously, we're a bit spoilt now with Alexas and things where you can get those home assistants just to respond to verbal commands. But that in itself is a speech and language development. So you can look at those tools as well as those which are button operated. Moving on now, so 30 to 50 months here, we're looking at operating simple equipment. So this might be remote controls. It might be having responsibility for using certain tools within the environment that you're working in. So within the setting, they might know what a door operation is. They might know that these buttons make these tools work. It may now be moving into computers or iPads or screens of some sort and how those tools work. There's a whole host of free software out there, both on tablet apps and computers and the internet, which have very many simple to operate tools, which might be simple games that use 1 or 2 keys, or it might be one button tap to jump. And you get the simple apps here, which are often on parents' mobile phones, which can take time, but that helps to develop the coordination as well and working with that equipment. A left and a right arrow to make something go left or right is a fine game to start on. Showing the interest in technological toys with knobs or pulleys, this is where your construction toys come in. So when you're bringing along a mechanical digger where it's got a jointed limb where you can move up and out, or a large scale sit-on sand digger, you can bring those technological toys with knobs and pulleys around, or you can bring up real life objects as well. So you might actually have hands-on practical experiences where you bring those technological toys together. It doesn't all have to light up, switch on, or make a sound. It might be a clockwork dancer, a music box where you open it up and it starts to move. And often these traditional things can have real fascination through their uniqueness in a world of screens and bright lights. Actually having something sitting quietly and watching a ballerina pirouette after you've wound the handle around the key can make a massive difference. Quite hard to find these days, but they are around. The skill of making toys work by pressing parts or lifting flaps. This is where you're starting to get into your more traditional toys. There's millions out on the market. I'm not even going to go there, but looking at the sounds and movements and new images, but then asking the children, if we could build something else in this toy, or if we could put a new flap or a new button or a new action on this toy, what would you do and what would it do? So what's the input and what's the outcome? And you can get the children to start to think about and develop their own toy making workshop. It's really nice to do it on the run up to Christmas in particular, as our toy workshop. If we were elves, what would we do? What would we build for Santa for this year? What's our new idea? And if you have the resources available, you can make mock-ups of those toys through cardboard and tape, or through, if you have wood or harder materials as well. You can look at all these things. You might want to choose things from magazines, cut out and stick them in, or you might want to make a laptop I've done that with children before, where you use Scrabble tiles or similar letters and you stick them onto a cardboard box. You just filled the lid over, and at the inside of the screen, we knew that if we pressed this button here, it made a new program. We slid out a bit of paper from a plastic wallet and slid a new one in, and that was changing the programs. And I was getting children to understand how my buttons and interactions in the Play laptop would change the screen on the Play laptop, and all the imagination could go wild from there. The final part is starting to get a bit more real world about knowing information can be retrieved from computers. You can use this in a number of different ways, but the best one is when a child asks you a question and you don't know the answer, tell them, but find out together and get them to ask verbally and use their language, or you can type in the question and say what you're typing in and then find out the answer. And any information is out there, and providing the question is appropriate, you can then find that and demonstrate that and model that to the child as a retrieval from computers route. And then they can use that knowledge later on. Wrapping up now quickly, completing simple programs on computers or interact with age-appropriate computer software. These are things like you've got, there's a website called Buwakwala, there's a website called Up to 10. Up to 10 allows you to do various math games. You move around catching tennis balls and things. You've also got, obviously, goes up to 10 years old, there is a early years section to it, don't worry, I'm not assuming very, very high experiences here. There's also a few nice websites and apps out there which are tailor-made for children. The Bbots and the Bbot apps are the simple programs that are always referenced, which is literally forward, backwards, left or right, and you can make those programs do those things. Getting a Bbot through a maze is quite a challenge for a Key Stage 1 child or a Year 1 child. But you can start off with making them move around the garden and telling the stories. One thing I like to do with Bbots or simple robots is programming a story. For example, the 3 billy goats gruff, where you make the Bbot move forwards, and then it comes back for being the littlest billy goat, and it goes forwards maybe 2 steps and comes back while you tell the middle billy goat's gruff story, and then the third one goes forwards, goes back, and then charges across the bridge because the biggest billy goat gruff can get across. That's linking your stories to your technology. Lots of different things there. We're wrapping up this session now because we've had 21 minutes. There are previous session recordings. All these links will be in the chat very shortly. If you want to give some feedback on the 21 and 21 sessions or today's session, please use that form link, which will be in the chat in a moment. The sessions are now over. This was the last one, so we don't have any more booking links to link to. The session recordings will be up by the end of this week and possibly by the end of today for all the previous session recordings where we cover other tools and training. You may be interested in the computing for new primary school coordinators, because that will show what the next steps are after early years. We've got the Great North Yorkshire EdTech Show on the 22nd of April, which is coming up. You can click on the link to join in. And the final one, there's a chap called Phil Bagg who is renowned for his jam sandwich robot. This is wonderful because in Key Stage 1, children can use descriptive language to make a teacher make a jam sandwich. But there's nothing to stop from doing this in early years, where you just have the playtime, where you have your adults in the room being controlled by the children, saying forward, backwards, left and right, and they love it when you bump into things or knock things off counters. So get the children to control you, and that is programming in its earliest years, simplest senses. So we move on from there. Just finally, from the Minibytes team and from the 21 and 21 team, thank you so much for attending these sessions. I hope this one's been a worthwhile addition to your list of sessions that you've attended. And if you've been here just for the early years content, I hope it's been suitable and given you some ideas for the future. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you all again sometime in the future. If you want to follow us, I'm on Twitter at Yorks2eLearn. You can note that it's got the number 2 there, Yorks2eLearn. And Schools ICT is accessible through NYCC Schools ICT on Twitter. The web address is schoolsict.co.uk. But for now, thank you very much. Take care of yourselves and enjoy the rest of your lunchtime. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to come back here and close the session. If you have any questions, please use the chat. If not, then you are free to hang up and go on the rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much. Cheerio.